ladies and gentlemen, we have Sava with us. What up, Sava?
Wait, I'm gonna do an attempt on the last name. Oh, really? After your short trip to Serbia, this better be good. So
I think I got it if you don't.
Zivkovic. Absolutely wrong.
I was gonna go Viskovic.
Closer. Still ways to go though.
Hey, as long as I'm close to the max, I feel all right.
No, that's fine. So it's Zivkovic for anybody who might be interested in how to pronounce some weird Balkan last name.
Zivkovic.
Zivkovic. Yeah. I'm gonna forget that tomorrow. That's completely fine. But wait. Stime brate though. There we go. Shame about this.
And what does that mean?
Like, what's up, bro?
Ah, right on.
For some reason, that one stuck. Yeah. That one, Nichichko. Oh, Nichichko, yeah. The beer. Well, we're gonna probably do a lot of this throughout the stream. Yeah, that IFCC is still kind of fresh, even though it's been a couple of weeks. Yeah, it is. Oh man, I guess we should, before anything else, introduce you for the rare people who might not know who you are. For all y'all in the chat, Sava is beyond being an awesome human being and an amazing person. He's a very, very talented director for Axis Animation. He comes from a architecture background, and he did, what was it, almost 10 years in architecture while building up the directing portfolio as well, right? Something like that. It's not really 10 years. I still haven't been 10 years in the industry, unlike some people on this call. So I studied architecture and interior design specifically, and then kind of naturally, because I fell in love with 3D early on, I kind of started working in architectural visualization, which is kind of the natural thing to kind of blend the two. But I always kind of wanted to do more kind of film stuff and animation and motion design and motion graphics. So I kind of slowly transitioned into a bit more abstractly things with motion design. And then lastly, like via just a couple of personal projects, all of that stuff changed pretty much in the last year. Slowly kind of turned more towards directing. And like you said, I'm with Axis Animation now. It's been almost a year. Still can't really share the projects that we're working on, but hopefully that will come soon as well. Dude, it's so amazing. I love watching your trajectory and just seeing, you're so talented and you have a very specific. I think you've developed an amazing style, and it's amazing to see larger and larger companies and projects use you for what you do best, and getting your stamp on larger and larger properties is amazing. Yeah, dude. I mean, I enjoy it. So it's super kind of. I'm still feeling kind of overwhelmed by the way it all happened. So I'm still kind of being blown away every single day at work, if I can call this stuff work. But yeah, it's super interesting stuff. Awesome. And then you did the cover for Future Slums, our kit that just came out today. Yeah. Do you wanna? I guess. Thanks. Before we jump in, I'm gonna let you get questions in if you have questions, or should we jump into the kit?
I think we should jump in because there's a lot to talk about here. I'm just gonna pull up the newbie in case anyone hasn't seen it, and then do one of y'all have a screen share you wanna show?
Yeah, so I can go through a lot of stuff. I don't know how you guys want to go about doing this. I can show my scene, show some of Octane, show my post-production stuff, whatever kind of works. How do I share screens in this thing? I usually use Skype. On the top right, you should see a dot. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, all right. Who do we got in the chat right now while you're sharing screens? We got Mr. Droki, Chris Boyan, Don Deschron,
It's Bojan.
JD Hilliard.
Bojan.
Bojan, sorry.
Bojan.
Bojan. You're right. He even clarified it for us.
And speaking of Bojan, I think he's got some cool updates on what we've been tracking in his progress.
Oh yeah, huge congratulations goes out to Bojan.
Well, I don't know. Is it finalized, Chris? Have you gotten an internship, Sava, to check you up on this? Chris Bojan is a guy who's been in the chat with us since we got started here, and he jumped on one of these chats, won a Google Hangout with us maybe a month ago, and said, you know, he's really trying to break into the industry, and he wanted to get a first internship going, and so he. We set some goals together, and we talked a little bit about how to do that. And then he messaged us last week saying that he had a very warm lead on landing that first internship. So tell us about it, Chris.
Freaking awesome, Chris! Congrats.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's awesome getting to waiting for his contract now. That's amazing.
Super cool.
Yeah, he set his goals for the whole Kitbash community, and now we kind of get to watch him as he step by step accomplishes them. And this is a huge step towards that. So I'm super stoked to see what happens.
Nice. Awesome.
We have Mike Johnson in the house. What up, Mike?
What up, Mike? I'm gonna steal all your money in poker this weekend.
JD is thrown.
I want to say what's up, Mike. I know him through social media, but we never actually met each other. So.
Good guy.
That's awesome stuff.
JD has thrown Sava's ArtStation link into the chat. Thank you, JD, as always. Mabel's in the house. What up, Mabel?
We got Forrest Lamb also. What's up, Forrest?
I want to say Behance is more up to date than ArtStation. Like that's pretty much my jam. I mean, I am on ArtStation. It's just that my Behance projects always have a bit more going on. So if you want to check it like fully, check it out there.
Awesome. Actually, someone will post that in the chat. I'm sure if they don't beat me to it.
It's fine.
They're not gonna beat me to it. I'm gonna get it. Damn it. Well done, Droki.
There you go.
Droke's fast, man.
Sava, tell us about the cover. What was the idea behind this?
Yeah, so you guys can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. I mean, like we've talked about this. Like we didn't mention some Kylo, who is a good friend of mine who I went to college with. He actually modeled this kit, and he did a bunch of other kits for Kit Bash. So we were really close friends. So I got to see kind of the progress on this one. I got to see how he made his stuff, and it was like freaking mind blowing. And as I mentioned like early on, it's like you can take pretty much any of these buildings and just kind of render them out, and that could be a cover-worthy image. It's so freaking detailed, like it's not even freaking funny. Like just this building here, which is like the whole front row, is just one singular kind of, I guess, group of buildings. I mean, just that one could have been a kit in itself. Like it's freaking amazing how detailed it is. But from the very start, it was all kind of obviously clear to me that it needs to be kind of densely packed. I mean, it's inspired by how do you say that, by the way? Kowloon City?
Kowloon, yeah.
Kowloon, yeah. I mean, so it's inspired by that. So it's naturally like it needs to feel kind of compressed and not leave any room for air, for breathing, for sky, for that matter. But it didn't really start this way. I mean, I can show if you want. I can show kind of the process of getting to this. So it started off like this. This would be the first image I did. You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this would be the first image I did. And although like this, I still quite like this image. Like it's not really representing the kit in the best light. Like you can't really see much of the detail. But it's just like still fun. Like this whole thing was assembled in just a couple of hours. It's just kind of placing the models. I avoided any kind of semblance of ground, roads, or stuff like that because it wasn't kind of. I wanted to focus just on the buildings and not do any kind of additional crazy modeling work. Just kind of focus on what's already in the kit and how to represent that. But after kind of coming to terms that this isn't really representing it in the best light, I just shift things around and tried a different kind of lighting setup, this is literally just this just kind of roughly assembled scene in Octane, and just put in like the default sunlight in Octane, and it like immediately creates this beautiful result. Like there is some post work to this, like the smoke and the atmosphere stuff, but mostly it's pretty raw. Like there's not a lot of additional kind of texturing done in post or anything like that. And then from this, it was just kind of how do I get kind of the feeling that I liked from the first one, while still portraying the kits in a good light. And that was essentially the latest image, or the one that you're seeing in the kit. It has that kind of verticality that I liked in the first image. Like if you see this, like it feels like it just kind of like rockets off into the sky, and there's no end to the city, to this kind of future slums. So I like the fact that that's still kind of portrayed here. This is like this is 200 millimeter lens, and the camera is pretty much like pointing straight up, not really straight up, but it's a pretty extreme angle. It's not something that you can get realistically. I think like to get this stuff realistically, you have to have all these buildings up on a hill, and you need to have the area in front of them clear to get this. But we're in 3D, so we can shoot the shit out of it if we want to. And I just for whatever reason, like as soon as I started playing around with it, and as soon as I kind of slapped the buildings together. Like you can move these buildings around while you're in Octane. I mean, whatever render engine you are in, but I use Octane, and you can move them around like in real time and just kind of rotate them, see where the shadows fall. And since I like this building at the very front the most, just kind of by moving the light, I figure out, I realized that this kind of shaft here. Can you see my mouse, by the way?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So I saw this shaft here that was kind of perfectly centered there, and kind of wanted to use that to kind of guide our eyes towards the character. I still wanted to include some semblance of a character, whatever that is, just to kind of add scale and to, I mean, I don't want to say add story. Story is maybe a strong word for this, but it definitely does add something to it versus just kind of seeing the buildings. And also just kind of having him in the very centered lower frame, just him as the only foreground element, really kind of gives off the sense of scale and the sense of kind of densely packed like slums. So that was pretty much like clear as soon as I got this one. It was just kind of moving some elements here and there to get the composition to work, and everything else was pretty easy, I'd say. I mean, again, I want to reiterate, like 90% of the work was already there. Like the models are freaking phenomenal. You can pretty much take a render of any of these, and it looks freaking insane. So.
Yeah, we got to throw some huge shout outs. Mihailo, who has modeled now, I think this is his fourth kit to be released. He did Victorian, Industrial, Utopia, and now this.
All right.
And every time he really, he steps it up every single time and just goes crazier and crazier. And honestly, I think this kit is truly, I think, a masterpiece. Do you have the 3D kit open by any chance? Can we tumble around a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So let me just see how this is gonna work. To see this, right?
Yes.
All right. So this is the kit as it comes. I had to do a slight conversion to Octane materials, but it's like a 10-minute setup. We're going to be releasing kind of a breakdown of the projects on ArtStation, like a small article. But essentially, what I covered there is pretty much like all the materials are pretty basic. Like it's just the kit ships with all the textures and the materials, and what I had to do is pretty much just plug in the textures that ship with the kit in the appropriate kind of material slots to get just load up this one. To get the materials to work, so this would be like the metal shader and stuff like that. This would be like the plastic kind of wrap thing that's happening on the construction areas of the buildings. And the only the only texture and the material that I had to kind of adjust is just kind of the bigger surfaces of the buildings, like the walls, like the white walls here and the brick walls here, and it's just I just kind of made a mixed material in Octane to kind of introduce some more dirt that's going to be gathering around the edges and the crevices. That's like super simple procedural stuff, but I'll show you there's also that when I open up the render. But yeah, this is the building I've been talking about. This thing is freaking insane. Like this kit. This is a kit in its own right. I mean,
yeah, dude, I love the like rooftop details that Mika added in here, like that, like a little like table and chairs, a little umbrella, like a little hangout section on the rooftop.
Yeah, the little flags, the freaking like I didn't even notice this the first time, but like there's like on the balconies there's like trash bags and cardboard boxes. Like it's fucking mental.
It's insane.
It's insane, yeah.
Also, a huge shout out to Droki Mike Golden, who really also did quite a bit of work on packaging this all up and making sure that like you don't get completely overwhelmed when you open this kit. And then also added, we were so in love with this kit. He wanted to go in there and add even more textures, and so he started throwing in some even more detailed textures and seeing how we could take it up even further. So I think this kit was something that the whole team was super excited for and kept trying to amp it up. Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, this is again like what I mentioned. Like this is just like one piece of a building, but if you ungroup it, like I just did, like you get all the pieces separated. So like every piece of the building, like you can reuse that as a separate building. And then you can ungroup those further, and then you get all the individual elements if you want to like go crazy with kit bashing.
One of my favorite things on those is actually the towers.
Oh yeah, the towers are freaking mental, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, these, because they're broken up. So you have your storefront layer, you have your apartment layer, which is middle, and you have your rooftop layer. I guess they're groups. Yeah. So if you want to make that 50 stories tall, you just grab the apartment group in the middle and just duplicate that up and then throw that rooftop right on top again. And that kind of modularity, yeah, just boom, like that. It's just like that easy to make it double the height. I love the modularity that's built into this thing.
Yeah, it's freaking mental, man. And you have all the kind of separated elements here, like if you want to go crazy with, and not separate anything by hand, like everything's here, nicely laid out for you. So it's pretty freaking sweet. Let me just try and make this more prettier when you try and open up Octane, but bear with me as it might crash. I've just updated to 4.0, and as amazing as it is, for whatever reason, like I've done the most kind of rookie mistake ever. I've updated my render engine in the middle of the project, and that was while I was working on Kit Bash on the cover. So up until the point of reaching like the final image, everything was working fine. And then in the final image, I had a shit ton of problems with rendering, but luckily it worked. So.
Amateur move, Sava. Amateur move.
Yeah. I mean, like that Octane 4 has been dangling like for months now. And I really wanted to get my hands on it, so I was kind of impatient. So that one's completely on me. So yeah.
We got Milan in the chat. What's up, Milan?
Oh damn.
Guys, if you guys don't know Milan, amazing concept artist who recently, I think just a month ago, opened up his studio, Masra.
Yeah.
You guys should go check it out. It's badass work, and he's a badass person.
Badass person, a badass beard.
Yeah, very and a almost badass haircut.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Let's see if this works.
No rush, dude. We can chat with everyone.
I'm not rushing. I mean, you can't reason with the guy.
You seem stressed of it. It's okay.
Sometimes you just cannot reason with the guy. Like sometimes Octane works fucking amazing, and sometimes, like now, it's just a little. I don't want to swear, but I kind of already did. So
it's a little stage shy. That's it. It's a little. Everyone's watching it.
Yeah. Let me just restart my scene, and then we'll see if we can get it running.
Let's see. What's up, chat? Jokey says playing with this kit is absolutely nuts. Just fumbling around the kit with an HDRI brings out a ton of possible compositions.
There you go.
Jokey actually did the product shots for this kit, and it like when he first sent those to me, I was just like, "What the crap?" It's like straight out of the render. He hooked up the shaders, but throwing a physical sun and sky, it's like, oh my god, this is some next level. Like truly, I think this sets a new bar for Kit Bash. Super excited and intimidated by how good this kit is.
Yeah, dude. Just come on.
Who else is in the chat? What's up, guys? You guys have questions for Sava? You guys have questions at all? Hit us up in the Twitch chat.
Droki tipped us off to Gabriel posting already with the new Future Slums kit on his Instagram, so we got that pulled up.
I saw that last night. I was looking at the hashtag KitBash3D stream, and it was like 2 hours after the kit launched, Gabriel had an image up.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, super cool.
I love this. Well done, Gabriel. If you guys don't follow Gabriel Gavorker Art, do that. He's the man.
Let me see. I wonder if there's any other.
Did you see in this the billboard with Kit Bash 3D in it?
No.
Nice.
Yeah, nice little wink. Thank you, Gabriel. Gabriel, of course, was in the Kitmas Bash competition.
Awesome.
Sorry, Banks. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just saw the little Kit Bash billboard in his thing. That's awesome.
Isn't that great? Yeah, well
done. We're working.
And we're in. How about that?
Yeah, unless it crashes again, but we'll see. Let me just try and manipulate this. I hope this doesn't slow down my kind of internet or whatever connection. You guys hear me okay still?
Yep.
Yeah, you sound good. David Ariev in the house. What up, David?
Hey, what's up, David? David's a cool dude.
Sava, what kind of machine are you running?
So this is specifically Octane based, so it's 4 980 Ti's. It's pretty much that. I mean, I don't even know what else is in there. It's like probably like 32 gigabytes of RAM. I have no idea what processor. It's something i7 something. With Octane, ever since I switched to Octane, it's all about the graphics cards.
Yeah.
And this kind of 4 GPU setup, I had it for like 2 years now, and it still runs smooth as hell, man. And even now, like with the freaking like the new GPUs, I don't even see the need to update. I mean, you see it now. Like it's pretty much this image is done in just a couple of seconds, man. Like the rendering for the whole kind of kit cover took, I think, 2 minutes per like just for like 4K image, and that's just like that's stupid fast in my opinion.
Cooking.
So yeah, it's pretty like fast and seamless, and like the best part about it, like for me, it's again you have this stuff in V-Ray as well. You have this stuff in Arnold and the other render engines. I still think Octane kind of does it a bit faster, the GPU stuff, but it's also like just has a slightly different kind of image quality to it. So let me just try and frame this up somehow, and then we can like play around with the lighting.
Yeah.
Just lock this stuff in. And like we can just like go crazy with this, and immediately like this is the biggest value of like real time rendering for me, is just being able to compose the shots specifically to light and shadow, and not just worry about like composing the shots in the scene to just gray models, and then when you put on lighting in it, it looks completely different. So this kind of makes the whole process super freaking fun, and like happy accidents can happen because you're pretty much like composing stuff as you would in real life. So like when I have this, like I immediately see this shaft here, which inspired like the composition to drive like towards the character.
Mm-hmm.
Had I done that in the scene, I wouldn't necessarily see the highlight there because it's just all gray. I don't have any lighting information there. So it's just like this brings up the value for me, like intensely, just being able to kind of see the near final result with this stuff. And this is just a super basic. I mean, that's all the materials kind of set up and just literally just the octane sun that comes around, and that's pretty much it. Like you can take this way further. You can make all the materials super layered and super nice, and you can make like all the kind of 3D volumetric fog and stuff. I still prefer to do that stuff in post. Although for some shots where you have like crazy camera moves, it's nice to have fog in 3D. But yeah, it's. Let me see if I can demonstrate the material stuff I've been talking about.
Yeah, cool.
If it doesn't freeze up, dude.
Dude, I love that everywhere you drop a camera, I'm like, oh man, that looks awesome. Like literally every place you like just tumble a camera around.
Yeah, dude, like I mean, it was incredible fun, man, to do this. Like you can see here, like let me just until the material loads up. There we go. Like you can even see it here. Like you can see the kind of dirt, the kind of greenish sort of dirt texture that's appearing in the corners and the crevices and wherever the kind of the interaction between the geometry is. And Max is auto saving now, so this will take a minute.
Well, it's auto saving. Actually, Mihailo's in the chat right now, and Milan asks, Nico, were you inspired by Belgrade buildings? It's actually kind of a funny story. We were looking at Kowloon, and we wanted to do this future slums kind of kit. And I kept sending him building references of what I thought was in Hong Kong. And he kept, like, several times, he was like, that's not Hong Kong, it's not slums, that's right down the street, that's in Belgrade, you asshole. Like, Belgrade's a beautiful city, but there's so many, like, there's definitely a lot of buildings that have this vibe to it, and have actually, like, a lot of character from it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was. I remember when you sent some of the earlier references to me as he was modeling this. Yeah, I chuckled. This is the kind of the breakdown, let's say, for the material. So you have like your base texture that ships with Kit Bash, which is the kind of beige-looking bricks, and then you pretty much layer in. So this is like how it looks like. This. So you have your concrete mixed material here, and then you have the dirt material, which is represented by the color red now. And then you have the mixed texture here, which is mixing a couple of textures that's making this kind of, that's making the dirt interact. So if I invert the normals, I can pretty much get a different result. And I can tweak the kind of intensity here, how much I want to kind of...
So it's collecting the dirt in the crevices of like...
Yeah. So it's set up at this point. It's set up to collect dirt in the crevices, which you can see here. But if you invert it, it's pretty much based on the normals. So if you invert the normals, then in that case, it's gonna collect the dirt on the edges. So that's the kind of the procedural way of making materials. Like you layer a couple of those. If you look at them, like if it's not this brick material, but it's a metal shader or whatever. You can make the same thing by having like dirt collect in the crevices and then have the scratches collect on the edges just by inverting the normals. And that is pretty much just, again, the radius, how far off is it gonna spread. Like you can go really tight. And this would be the way to create those edges, like if you see now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's something just in general for everyone who's watching, like, whenever we want to dirty something up, a lot of the times the gut reaction or the quickest way to do that is just apply grunge across the board or dirt across the board. But to think of how like dirt and grunge actually works in real life, of how it actually drips because of rain that will kind of create streaks that'll push it down into like crevices, or how it'll get stuck in different areas. It really adds like a whole other level of realism to it. It's amazing that the shader does that.
Yeah, I mean, but this would be kind of the most simplistic version of that. Like you can see if I just change the color, you get some weird ass results. But you just need to kind of use the texture instead of the color there, and use like a dirty texture, and then you immediately get that result. This would be, again, like this is the very, very rudimentary kind of setup because I knew from the very start I'm going to be pretty far away from the building, so I don't need to go into that much detail. But what you just mentioned, Max, is like you would essentially layer this effect in. So you would have an overall kind of dirt that's happening between the geometry, and then you would have specific masks that are like leak masks, like on the top of the buildings, and maybe a separate like dirt mask on the bottom of the buildings where the traffic is, where the kind of different type of dirt accumulates. So in layering the different types of dirt and different types of masks, like that's how you get to the most realistic result and the most kind of, it just needs a ship. And I will say that stuff is a bit easier to do in V-Ray than in Octane, although I just got Octane 4, so they have some new stuff up in there. I just didn't have time to kind of check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's such a huge thing to just be deliberate with where you're putting these things. Like, yeah, like a traffic dirt mask of where it gets kicked up onto the streets versus like, you know, what happens on the rooftops, which, you know, is more maybe hit by rain more often or has those kind of drips and streaks. Or the dirt is just collecting in a different way. Just being deliberate about all that stuff just adds so much to it.
Yeah, man. It's the kind of the little attention to detail that needs to be present, like in all aspects of CG. Like if you take a look at the image making in CG, it's pretty much like all those little variations need to be present in the modeling stage, in the texturing stage, the shading, and then finally like in the lighting and in the compositing. So you would pretty much like you need to just kind of always keep in mind of like the perfectness that CG sometimes brings to the table and how to kind of break that up. And Mika has already done that here with all the kind of imperfectly kind of spread around like smaller detail. Like when you look at the stuff here and the scaffolding, like it's not perfectly laid in. Like there are some variations in the positioning. Like some stuff is lower, some stuff is higher. Like it's not perfect by any means, and that's what's bringing that further realism. So when you have that in the modeling, then you have that in the texturing as well. And finally, like in the lighting, like if you have 5 different light sources, like they don't all need to be the same intensity because in real life they probably wouldn't be, nor the same color. Like there would be slight variations here and there. And like when you talk about that stuff, most people would go like, yeah, but does that stuff really matter? But in the end, it does. Like it gets accumulated throughout all the various steps and processes. And if you pay attention to each one, to each step of the way, like at the very end, when you get the final result, it's what separates the kind of mediocre's obviously CG image to a more kind of naturalistic one. Yeah, that's my kind of ramble.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I don't do CG that much these days. Like this is like a nice vacation for me doing this cover because ever since I started working with Axis, it's been nonstop directing. And while I do love that, I do kind of miss the CG aspects of it slightly. So this has been really, really nice, kind of connecting me back to my background.
Yeah, it's definitely like put the CG hat back on, come out for one last run.
Yeah.
One final job, then we're kicking it out of this town.
All right, I'm gonna close this down because I don't want to push it too far.
Yeah, we pushed our luck quite a bit.
Yeah,
that's awesome though, and I mean I remember just I mean it feels, what was it, 2 weeks ago I was at your place and you were just opening up for the first time and tumbling around. And like I haven't had time to do CG in a long time, but just watching you tumble around that kit, I was like, damn it, oh that looks so much fun. I want to jump in there and make something.
Yeah, man. I mean, you'll get your chance.
One of these days. In the meantime, I have to live vicariously through the Kitbash 3D artists and see all the awesome work they make and go, I want to do more of that.
So see this, for example. Now, do you guys want me to go over the kind of compositing?
Yeah, let's run through the 2D side, and we're going to give out this PSD to everyone who's on our email list. So if you're watching and you're not on the email list, throw your email into the kitbash3d.com website, and we'll send you this PSD later this week.
Yep. but just to kind of get this out of the way, like I do all my compositing in After Effects just because, like, you know, in all my freelance days, I've mostly worked on animations, and it's just easier for me to kind of do this stuff in After Effects, although Photoshop is a viable option. But for the Photoshop file, like you'll have every step of the way layered up, but it's not the same layers as in After Effects. They're just pretty much all kind of flattened down images that give you the insight into the whole process, but you won't be able to kind of control it and kind of change things. The tricky part about that is I use a lot of plugins in After Effects, and we can really ship that as is. So just to be aware of that. But you can see here, this is the raw render, like, and then this is the classical. It's back on. It's the classical before and after, like the post love. It's pretty like I love taking a look at this and like seeing how much of an impact like post work can actually do, and it's kind of mind blowing, honestly. Like this is by far my favorite part of the production. I guess every CG artist will tell you that, but yeah. So pretty much like what I do, and this is a simple one. I can open up the other file, which is the night image, which has a lot more going on. First of all, you can maybe go through, like, do you guys want to, if the audience is watching this, you guys want to see this, which is just kind of maximized view, or do you want to see the actual whole After Effects file and see how I, like, what are the layers and what the layers are doing? Like, essentially this.
We'll throw it out to the chat. Let us know. You want to see the
Do you want to see this, or do you want to see
the After Effects?
Yeah, I mean we can pretty much do this, but it's gonna be a smaller image. That's the only kind of. We can do this probably. Might be easier for everybody to follow.
Cool. We got it. We got one vote in for After Effects.
So this stuff, right? All right.
Let's do it.
One vote will do. All right. So we have the base layer, which is kind of just the raw render. And if I solo that, and just see if this will work. No, it won't. Usually when I work on the images, I like to kind of, as I render them out, as I save them out, I save them in a sequence manner. So it's they're sequenced up, so I can load them in After Effects actually as a sequence. So I can go back in time and see where I kind of started with. So cool. I can always. Just something I found kind of works for me. Like you can see at the very beginning of it, it was I rendered things out in like layers, the foreground, midground, and the background, and then I composited them together. And it was supposed to be overcast, but that sucked, so I didn't want to do that. So brought in the sunlight. This one was missing for some reason. Brought in the background stuff, and then changed the composition entirely. Move things around slightly until I got the kind of final thing. And then, like, let's see if I can maybe slightly increase the size of this. Like we have, this is the ambient occlusion layer, and what it does, it's essentially what you're seeing in the kind of on Kitbash website when you scroll through the images. Like ambient occlusion pass is essentially what was driving the dirt effect I was showing earlier on in Octane. And it's essentially just, again, calculating where the kind of surfaces are forming together, and it's creating this kind of soft shadow. It's not realistic per se, because like in reality, you would have lights coming in from different directions, and this wouldn't be as perfect as it is. But it's kind of useful for post stuff, because it offers like when you multiply this on top, like you get a lot of like more detail out of the smaller kind of smaller scale stuff that Mika has modeled, and you can obviously control this. You can mask it in the areas you want it to, and mask it out of the areas you don't want it to. So yeah, the next kind of, so I included this little character is for my Playgrounds title. It's just a little robot guy. But since I didn't show the scene, like this scene is crazy vertical. So this guy is actually much lower than this kind of building here. So it's actually like the blue stuff in his cape, in his kind of plasticky wrap cape, is actually from the sky coming from underneath. So I had to kind of just offset that slightly to be more in tone with the building. And for that, I usually just have this material ID pass, which looks like this. And you can just pretty much select any color, like it separates all the materials by color. And you can select each one of those and just use that as a mask, as I did here. You can see just cape is kind of masked out. And that's pretty much it for the kind of base adjustments. And then the biggest kind of part for me is just getting the fog to work. So when you zoom out, when I include a fog, it looks like this. And if I isolate the fog just by itself, it's looking like this. And let me just go into the pre-comp for that. So I have a separate composition for that. And the reason I do that stuff is, if I bring in the original ZDAPT pass, it looks like this. I just need to do a levels adjustment. All right. So it looks like this. It's pretty flat. It has all the information for the separation between the kind of foreground, midground, background stuff. But again, if you use this as it is, just for your ZDAPT, for your fog, it's way too flat. It's not kind of, it doesn't have some kind of different visual interest to it. So what I like to do is just kind of copy it a couple of times, like if you see here. And also the biggest kind of important, the most important thing is not to use the ZDAPT at all to blend it in, just use like the solid blue color or whatever color you're using for your fog. And then use the ZDAPT as your Luma matte. So that looks like this. Like if I have to shrink this down, but if I, so this is my blue layer, and then my ZDAPT layer has the levels on it. And if I change this stuff, like you can see, I'm bringing the fog back or more towards, and I can easily kind of isolate this stuff. Put back. So I have the simple layer here, and then I'll add on top of it another one, which is just going to bring up some fog in the foreground and create a bit more of a kind of separation between the top and the bottom of the building, as if there's some low-lying fog there. Then I'll do another layer, and this one has the levels set up like more in the background. So you can see this, like it's controlling where it's happening, and it's bringing kind of attention to these areas as if they have kind of more foggy elements to there. Then we have a couple of like central fog layer, which is spilling off a little bit in the foreground. It's not like completely cut out behind these buildings. And it just kind of creates a more bigger sense of depth. And then lastly, the kind of the most far out background one. And again, if you kind of compare that to the very flat looking ZDAPT, raw ZDAPT pass you have, that's also the point I was making with kind of things looking way too CG, like as much of layers as you can break it up to, and as much variety and variation and kind of imperfection you can bring to your elements, like the better result you're going to have in the end. And then lastly, like that, so that would be, let's see what happened. Yeah, that would be kind of my ZDAPT pass. And then if I like overlay that on top, I get the fog here. And then with the fog, I can pretty much like use this as my color corrector as well, because I can pretty much go freaking crazy with the color of it. Oh. I was just gonna ask, can everybody hear me? Because everybody's been silent.
We're in awe.
We're letting you go, letting you go off the rails with this. This is awesome.
All right, let me just blast through then. I included a bit of a God ray here, a bit of a God ray effect. Like if you look at it in the isolation, it's just kind of a warm hotspot thing. It's driven by optical flares, which is kind of a video co-pilot effect, so you can pretty much just like control the direction of it. It has a heavy blur on it, just to kind of make it more softer. But again, it still uses ZDAPT as my mask, so you get the light ray actually behind the character. And like even this stuff, like you can, with this stuff, you can pretty much go like, I don't know how much of this you can see, but you can put it behind the buildings, for example, just to create more kind of areas there. And this is why, another reason why I kind of like doing this stuff in After Effects, because you can't really do this stuff in Photoshop. In Photoshop, I mean, you can definitely use ZDAPT to mask things out, but you can get this kind of interactive way of changing the levels on your ZDAPT pass that's being used as a LumaMat, and see kind of interactively where the kind of light beam sits in the scene, in the ZDAPT space at least. Another small flare here, just hide the masks. That's something to bring a bit more interest and make the city more alive. And then most of the stuff is pretty much just getting all the smoke details in. This is again like a separate composition. All of these are like, if I flick through, these are footages, sequences. So if I go through, like, you can see the smoke actually animate. The masks are off, but it's pretty much, it's an easier way because you can pretty much use just a singular footage and just kind of offset it in the timeline, and you get like multiple reusable smoke elements. Also an advantage over Photoshop, although with Photoshop it's much easier to kind of mask things around. But for this stuff, as you can see here, like all the smoke elements are still using the ZDAPT pass as the masking elements. You do get that separation and the integration.
Do you just have a library of like effects elements like smoke or?
Oh yeah, this is yeah. I don't have a huge library. This is just the old and overly used Video Copilot with the Action Essentials 2-pack. It's so widely used now that it's like I wish you guys like to achieve the Video Copilot level of usability in the stock models that you provide.
We do too. We aspire.
Here we have this. These are just kind of the additional smaller smoke elements that just kind of see where they're popping up. Just to kind of break up the scene even further. So you have your large scale smoke, your small scale smoke. Again, layers. Last one. And then
looks. That's what they call names.
The looks. This is my jam now. Like this is what's making it shine. So I'm gonna, for this one, well, actually I'm gonna do it here. So this is the plugin for the color correction that I use, or for color grading specifically. And as it comes out, like it's pretty much like it comes out in its like you can use like your, where's the filters? So you have the pre-built looks here, and it's pretty much like the Instagram style filters, but that stuff sucks. Like you need to build your look by yourself, and you need to kind of tailor it specifically to the shot and not use stuff that's off the shelf. It might work sometimes, but more often than not, like you'll need to kind of do this stuff yourself. So it all starts with curves adjustments, like, and immediately that just kind of brings everything, makes everything pop. I render everything in linear workflow, so it's Gamma 2.2. So it's pretty much flat, ungraded footage, and then you can do your magic in the grading.
Are you using 32-bit?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I also use 32-bit. I always render out in Targas. I don't do like DXRs or shit like that. It's way too kind of well, for animation at least, it's way too high storage space just for EXR sequences. Targas have always been kind of safer way to go for me.
Typical After Effects user.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Everybody at Access is laughing at me for using After Effects and not going to Nuke.
Look who's laughing now, Buster.
So this is like just a spot exposure effect. It just kind of brings up the lighting up top. We don't see the sky, but we need a hint that the lighting is coming from the sky. Slightly darkening the bottom part of the image. This is a really kind of natural way of I really like this effect. This is like diffusion, but it really acts naturally in the way it diffuses light. It's not like glowing and blowing things out. It just kind of brings more atmosphere look to it and just kind of diffuses the image slightly. Chromatic Aberration that's set to like 0.7, like it's really, really, really low, 0.07 actually. The lowest setting you can do for Chromatic Aberration, just kind of, it's barely even there. And then the very kind of aggressive color grade, three-way color grade, pretty much controlling your shadows, midtones, highlights. I like to always go slightly green in my shadows. I think that's just me being a fan of Fincher too much, I guess, in a way. But then I always kind of bring that down with hue saturation because I do have this kind of more unsaturated look to the things. And then this is like color wheel where you can isolate the colors and you can desaturate like certain colors specifically. So you can see if I can just bring down the oranges and all the other colors stay the same. So I just slightly brought down the oranges here. And that's my looks layer. And then after that, I have another CC color correction layer, which is doing something. it's slightly darkening the image, slightly a bit more contrast. It's an S-curve. Then another color correction layer, which is slightly tweaking the color balance. Then a vignette, and this is also a Red Giant plugin. This vignette is acting, what I like about this vignette, like if you go here in the looks, for example, and if you add a vignette here, like the vignette here is really, really uniformly kind of distributed. It's just kind of darkening images very uniformly in a circular pattern. And what this misfire vignette is doing, it's actually like looking at your image and it's darkening it only in the areas of the image where it's already kind of dark. So it's appearing more here and here than it's going to be appearing here. And stuff like that. So it's really kind of, it's subtle. I keep it to a minimum, but it's definitely helping the image. Then just filter. This is something I've used for freaking years. I don't know if anybody from the audience knows who Alex Roman is, but he's like the god of CG architecture. Like he did the film 10 years ago now, and it's still the best looking CG film ever. And like he has a breakdown video where he shows what he does. Like that's pretty much like my whole workflow is based on his stuff. But he has these filters that he uses. It's pretty much an image that's looking like this.
Wow.
So I watched. I mean, it's an Instagram thing, but I watched this tutorial and I wanted the same thing. So I just paused it, opened up Photoshop, color picked stuff from his video and got the same image because I couldn't find it anywhere.
That's amazing.
And then it's stupid as hell, man, but it's something that's just kind of, I love his work and I've used that. And he sets it at overlay at like 15%. So it's really subtle, like you cannot even freaking see it, but it does introduce a bit more vignette and it does a little color shift like throughout the image. And I think that's just something that brings a bit more kind of, a bit more realism, because in scenes like this, you don't have much separation of the colors. Like pretty much everything's the same tone. You really kind of have to do this stuff in grading. And then at the end of that, I pretty much pre-compose all of these layers. This is my main comp, and then I have a shift channels comp, which is essentially this. So you have your red, green, and blue channels that are separated. So if I go to the red, it's this, and this by itself is looking pretty neat. It's kind of a Ashthorpe, Akira kind of thing.
Akira vibes for sure.
Yeah. And then, or this, like this is freaking, like looks sick as hell. And then this looks freaking dark. But you have the three layers separated, and then you can pretty much make your own chromatic aberration. So I have on these layers, I have like the shift channel effect is doing that. And then if you put all three layers to add, you get the image because you're mixing red, green, and blue. If you take the blue channel, like, and then, or whatever channel, like, I'll just reset it. Let's go with this. Let's go with red channel.
You're gonna force us down this spiral back into the chromatic aberration trends that were going on.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
Damn it, dude!
Boom! Chromatic aberration. It's just like it's freaking. I like controlling stuff like this, by hand.
For those of you in the audience or who maybe aren't familiar with chromatic aberration, Sava, do you want to give like a rundown of what this is doing inside of the camera?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm probably gonna fuck it up on some technical level, but it's essentially what you have is when the light hits the lens, the glass part of your lens, the light kind of bends and kind of disperses through the lens, and it breaks off. It breaks off into its basic kind of color values. And in all of the lenses, this is the effect that's visible in all of the lenses, no matter how high quality or low quality they are. It's just going to be more or less visible because you can't get to the perfection of manufacturing a lens that's not going to have this effect. It's just how reality works. So what that causes is at the ends, at the kind of ends of your image, like the corners and the very ends of the image, it causes like this effect of like shifting colors slightly. So you have like this stuff, like it's not perfect. And a dead tell of a CG looking image is like, I wouldn't say a dead tell, but it's this stuff needs to be done very subtly because you can't go like this and call it like, oh, this is realistic. Because it was at one point it was so freaking overused in CG, like everybody was doing literally this, and it's a neat looking effect, but it's like it's realistic only if you use it very subtly and very well. This is the opposite of what I wanted to do. If you use it very subtly and very kind of sparsely, that's where you kind of benefit from it. And then just being able to kind of pick and choose what channels are you going to affect. Like, again, like everybody just slaps on the chromatic aberration effect and just gets this. And this would be offsetting the red channel, which is the most frequent one. I like to offset the blue channel because that's just how I like to run things. But what you get with the blue channel, though, like blue channel is way more subtle. So you get the blue and green and the yellow kind of offset in the channels. Like you see that. And even now, like I've gone crazy. Like this is 35, and it's still way more subtle than what we had with the green and red stuff. And then if you go subtle on this, like if you go like a really small value, you get stuff like this. Like you get like just some slight blue color bleeding towards the edges, and that's like you're never gonna see that from here. But it's softening up an image slightly, and it's introducing these artifacts that are definitely present in all the kind of in pretty much any image. Like if you zoom any image, you'll find this stuff present, and this just kind of the subtlety is key here, and it's what makes the image work, I guess.
That's awesome. Joki also throws in a probably a more technical thing than I ever understood. He goes, light waves bend different amounts based on their wavelengths. So red bends more than blue, etc.
There you go. And I'll just finish up. This is like the very last step. I full screen this just to better kind of showcase what's happening here. But the very last step is there's this plugin called Film Convert, and I've used it for years. It's freaking awesome. When I turn this on, like you immediately get, to me, freaking way more realistic image in the end. It's just a simple grading tool and color correcting tool, but by default, what it does is it introduces film grain, but it has the kind of real scanned film grain. It's not digital. It's real scanned film grain from different stocks of film. So if I zoom in, like before and after, I don't know what kind of comes through in the stream, but you can see that. And then you can control the way, you can control the film you're using. So this is 35 full millimeter. It's the smallest grain. If I go to 8 millimeter film, the grain is going to be much larger. I mean, this is pretty much fucking up the whole image. But it's you can choose like 8 millimeter, 16 millimeter, super 16, super 35, or 35 full frame. It just varies the size of the grain. And then what it also does, it has different presets for the film stock lookup tables. So it has like all the old films that are used in Hollywood, and it has like different film stocks for the lookup tables, just essentially for color profiles. So if you flick through those, you can pretty much get sort of different looks to the image.
That's awesome. Holy crap. What's that plugin called?
It's called Film Convert. So this is like the FJ Neo, the black and white film, the old film. Like immediately when you apply that, it looks freaking cool. Like go 8 millimeter on this, and it's some spooky shit. Like it's
Yeah.
look at this.
That's awesome. That is super cool. That's like Bigfoot footage right there.
Yeah. So that's the kind of very last step, and then I did just a slight hue adjustment again because I just want to bring some color back to it, and
I know that last adjustment. You were like, and I'm done. Needs one more thing. It's the last two adjustments.
It's literally what happened, man. Like I exported the image, I looked at it, and I was like, needs more saturation, just 15% more.
Yep. I do like half of my like final color corrections while standing up, about to leave my desk. Like, okay, and one more thing. Okay, I'm walking out the door. One more thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can spend days doing this stuff, man. Like this is honestly like color correction and color grading is this is where you bring your image to life, and this is where you kind of like you can literally take a bad render and kind of unrealistic render and kind of make it shine in color grading just. And to anybody who hasn't seen that, what I mentioned, that guy Alex Roman, like if you can find, just type in 3rd and 7th Alex Roman, you'll find it. It's on Vimeo. It's like 12 minutes short film, but it still to this day looks like footage. It looks real. It doesn't look CG, and that's impressive for a fully CG film that's 10 years old. It's and he has a couple of breakdown videos where you actually see that. Like he starts off with a render that's so flat and so kind of uninteresting, and then just makes it shine beyond belief in comp. And that's a great case study, honestly, for everybody who's interested in kind of CG image making.
That's awesome. Sava, you killed it on this cover. It's absolutely beautiful, and thank you for walking us through your process. It's really amazing to see how you put this together.
Well, guys, we don't have
argument for After Effects.
No, it's I mean, now honestly, like for it varies from projects to projects. Obviously, like for matte painting, intense matte painting stuff, obviously you have to go for Photoshop. This just works for my kind of workflow and for what I like, for the stuff that I'm kind of used to doing, and it's specifically tailored to kind of projects. So you can do this stuff in Photoshop, you can do this stuff in After Effects. It's whatever's the easiest one for you, I guess.
Gotcha. I have one last question for you.
Go ahead.
What brush do you use?
Motherfucker. Yeah, that's. I asked Matt, for everybody who hasn't been at IFCC, I asked that question to Max as he was doing his lecture. So I guess this is your way of getting back at me.
You asked it to every person. But we all know it's the tool that makes the image, not the artist.
Yeah, definitely. Let me see if I can.
Because of that, go get your Future Slums kit, everyone. It's day one, so 50% off. Sava, thank you so much for doing an amazing cover and for sharing all your knowledge with the Kitbash community.
No worries, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, this was a freaking blast working on this. Again, like I mentioned, this connected me through my early days of CG. So thank you so much, guys. I really can't wait to see what everybody else kind of does with this kit. I think this is gonna like break the sales. At least I hope so. So yeah.
Yeah, dude, I hope so too. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Go out, grab your Future Slums kit on day one. Get it while it's hot. And let's see if... Thanks.
Yeah, bud.
How you doing? You have anything else for Sava?
Sava, you're the man. Thank you. This is incredible. I think you guys have said it all, and I am too really excited to see what the rest of the community will do with this kit.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, guys, go out there, make some awesome images. Don't forget to share it with us. Sava, we will talk to you soon. Can't wait to see what you do next with Axis.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to share something really soon.
We'd love to have you back on the show if you ever want to do any breakdowns or anything of the awesome work you're doing over there.
Seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet.
All right,
thanks,
gang.
guys.